How's it going, YouTube? I'm LBNinja7 and I have done the hard part for you guys. I have sat through those PTR queues for weeks now, and I'm going to compile a list of which healers are getting more fun coming from Season 1 and which are getting less fun. Now, keep in mind, this is not which is the most fun. I do have a video idea for that. This is not the most competitive or the best or the highest performing. I think those tier lists should be approached with caution and we'll stay away from those for now. But this tier list is my opinion based on my playtime on the PTR of how each spec is coming into the season. Are they improving in terms of how much fun they are as a player, or are they just decreasing or devaluing coming into season 2? Let's go ahead and jump into it, and I have them randomized in a random order. Let me go ahead and explain the tier list. This first one, you will want to slap your grandma. It is that much fun coming from Season 1 into Season 2. We might see a few healers in that tier. More fun, that's kind of self-explanatory. They were fun. They might have been fun, or they might have been abysmal in Season 1, but bottom line is, in my opinion, I think they are more fun coming into Season 2. As fun means they might have seen some improvements here, might have seen some things that are bad there, but overall, they kind of net out into being as fun, which might not be a bad thing, might be a bad thing. It all depends on your perception of where they were coming in Season 1. You can kind of get the idea. The reason why I do tier lists like this is because it takes my opinion and can base them off of your opinions as well, instead of just being my opinions in a tier list. And then we have less fun, and then Blizzard, please help, send some help, distress signals, SOS. Let's go ahead and start off with Disc Priest now. Disc Priest is seeing a lot of changes. All of the healers are seeing a ton of changes. But Disc Priest has something that I think is going to set them apart in terms of how much fun they are. Now, they are removing some of the cooldowns, the major cooldowns that Disc Priest has, like Rapture being a big one. I mean, that is a staple spell for Disc Priest, so a lot of people are concerned about that, but I can guarantee you that I have found that so much more fun because what they are replacing it with is they're replacing all of the bad stuff that they're removing, or all of the maybe mediocre stuff that they're removing, or you might have liked some of the stuff that they're removing from Disc Priest, but they're replacing it with things that people have given so much positive feedback about in the past. For example, Uppies or Ultimate Penitence, one of the coolest cooldowns they've ever added into the game, hands down. They are making it viable. You no longer will land in a swirly and die upon trying to save everyone's life. You can control, you can steer where you're going to land. It is now viable to take this talent into content, and you're not inting and doing so. That alone just bumps them up, in my opinion. Sacrificing Rapture for Uppies being viable, I would take that any day of the week. Not to mention, one of the tier lists in the past that people really enjoyed was when your power word radiances could be cast instant cast or on the move. It really helped be because you're a non-mobile spec, you can cast this massive AoE heal on the move. They got rid of that. A lot of people were upset, but a lot of people voted against having it back because they liked other tier sets, like the one that extends those atonements, which we're getting back as well. But they have replaced that with adding a burst heal to evangelism, which I was thoroughly surprised at how great, how fluid this made the playstyle, because now you don't just need to save your penances or your power word deaths for your movement. You can pop evangelism for your movement if you have to do a heavy movement, and it just felt so clean, so much fun. Removed a lot of the pain points from Disc Priest, which I would argue makes this so much more fun. But they're also doing a lot of changes to their baseline kit. Things like Penance. You no longer have to cast 2 smites, power word shield, clench your butt cheeks, cross your legs, and pee yourself to get your full value of Penance. You don't. There's a lot less steps to get all of the value from Penance, which a lot of people might be concerned about. Like if you were a top-end Disc Priest pusher, you might think, crap. Now I can express my skill in less ways, but I honestly have not found that. You can still stack up all of your things to get your penances full value just the same. It feels like there are less moving parts to get the same product, and I have really enjoyed that. You're also still encouraged to go haste, which is great because you can extend your atonements, which is something that people loved from a past tier set. Your smite's extending atonements. It's a quality of life thing because it extends the lowest atonement, which is huge. And then also your haste now scales down your penances cooldown, which as a Mistweaver player with us and Rising Sunkick, how that works, I can say is so fun, so enjoyable. I think we have our first Slap Your Grandma. If you're wanting to play Disc Priest, slap your grandma and log on to some Season 2. It's a good time. It really is. I think there is a lot of risk that the devs are taking with some of these changes. But I'm just going to say it. I think it's going to invite more new players to not think that there's so many things that are keeping them from grasping this spec while still capturing the heart and enjoyment of returning Disc Priest. I think Disc Priest is going to land on its feet, not just in a power level. We'll talk about power level later on, closer to the season. But in terms of how fun these specs are, I think Disc Priest is nailing it. The devs nailed it with these changes. There might be some that are questionable, but overall, huge thumbs up. Moving on to Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman, for me, in my opinion, I think this was one of the, if not the most fun healer in Season 1. Now, they are having some very questionable changes coming to Season 2. So Ancestral Guidance, which was one of your kind of cooldowns that you would rely on to heal through big boss mechanics or AoE pack mechanics, they have removed that. And in my testing, it seemed like with Farseer, which is one of their hero talent trees, there isn't really much of a replacement coming in, which you could argue that Whispering Waves was supposed to be that, but I think that was supposed to be the replacement for Primordial Wave. But it feels like with Farseer, there just isn't something to fill that gap in your cooldown cycling that Ancestral Guidance leaves. And with Totemic, it really does. Like my testing with Totemic Shaman has felt a lot more crisp, a lot more fluid, because you can bridge the gap between like your Ascendance and your Spirit Link totem and your Healing Tide totem with like your Healing Stream totems being more powerful with Totemic Shaman. Whereas, like I said, with Farseer, you just lack that. And then on top of that, they're really trying to give your mastery more of an oomph or more of a reason to go. But realistically, their mastery should not be incentivized. Like, from an idea standpoint of a player, I do not want to pump a mastery that gets better the lower health my allies are. All in all, that alone is very questionable. The removal of Ancestral Guidance without the proper replacement of it. However, I will say one of the biggest pain points, and if we're talking about fun, pain points are things that directly take away from fun. One of the biggest pain points with Resto Shaman is the amount of keybinds. If you've ever loaded up Resto Shaman, I'm sure you've had to sacrifice a few totems that don't make it onto your bars at least the first few times. I still just keybound Stone Bulwark Totem. I never had that thing bound. There are so many keybinds, so I do respect that. However, in its current state, it felt very unfun. I'll be honest. It felt more unfun than it has ever been since I've been playing this game, because it just feels like it is lacking something. And I don't mean that it's lacking in power level. That's a different thing. But it just feels like there are mechanics that come your way as a shaman. And if they're boss mechanics, you're kind of screwed if you don't have one of those cooldowns, or you can't pair two cooldowns together like you used to be able to, because now you just have one less. On top of all of that, Farseer is undergoing a problem right now where your tier set operates off of you dropping your healing rain, but currently dropping healing rain is really, from what I've heard, it's not even where I was pressing it in my testing, and I just didn't even see healing numbers. That's how low it's healing in Mythic Plus. But people are saying that you aren't even supposed to be pressing it, so it's just like a huge question mark in the Farseer category. But Totemic is arguably as fun as it has been in the past. I will say that Farseer does gain the bonus, like I said, of Whispering Waves being a little bit of fun to play around. It seems like they're kind of trying to copy what Mistweaver's doing with Invigorating Mist, or Trail of Light kind of esque from Holy Priest. So I do like that, but I just think that it is one of the few healers that is losing coming into Season 2 as far as how fun they were. But like I said, don't let that make you not play this next tier, because it started off as probably the most fun healer. It's just, in my opinion, it is actively losing how fun it can be coming into Season 2. Moving on to Holy Priest, and before I talk about it, I want to say I'm not going to put like all in the top, all in the bottom. We're going to try to spread it out a good bit. That way it's not just like two tiers and then just a gap in between. But with Holy Priest, I think in Season 1, a lot of the feedback that the spec got was that in rating, there really felt like there wasn't too much agency or too much of a purpose to have a holy priest, or to be a holy priest, I should say, because your halo was doing so much heavy lifting. Not only did it do so much healing, but it also was kind of what centered all of your healing around it. And as a player, that's cool. Like Halo is a sick ability in watching go out and come back in, seeing all those green numbers at once. It scratches a brain itch, but doing that for a whole tier is not fun. It's not exciting, it's not engaging, and it doesn't make you as a player feel, worthy of your raid spot. You could literally just like play any healer and coat hots and like, do healing any other way, but it just was not engaging or rewarding. And I really do like all of the changes that are coming to Holy Priest, especially their AoE healing. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think they're in the final numbers of where they're going to be. I don't think that they're as tuned as they can be. But from an enjoyment and player perspective, they are going in the right direction. With a little bit more tweaking, they will get there. But these are huge steps in the right direction. So, what am I talking about? Well, your Sanctifies and your Prayer of Healings play better with each other. Your Flash Heals, you no longer have to Flash Heal, you can Flash Heal Prayer of Healing, which feels great. It gives you an AoE alternative to just using your Lightweaver for heal. That also gives a lot of dynamic rotation to the spec. You no longer flash heal, flash heal, flash heal. Oh, my cooldown's ready. You can now like flash heal. Ooh, I would get more healing if I AoE healed, but now I could spot heal, then AoE heal, then spot heal, AoE heal. Like there is so much more engagement, which just makes this spec more fun to play. Outside of that, a lot of AoE, small numbers, mind you, things like Cosmic Ripple, which is when one of your holy words comes off cooldown, you just pulse out a little bit of healing around you. Little things like that, they add up because it's things that you can control. The more on top of your game that you are, the more you're going to be cycling those holy cooldown or holy word cooldowns, pulsing out more heals more often. On top of that, during your apotheosis, there's a lot more engagement now in your apotheosis. You can extend its duration, enhance its power. It feels way more engaging as a player. And getting back to Cosmic Ripple, I know I'm harping on this one tiny little talent change, but things like that, like these small incremental changes that enhance your AoE healing, really make you as a player feel way more engaged. On top of that, they are removing a lot from the spec. The spec has a lot of changes coming. Like I said earlier, all of these specs have so much coming, but almost especially Holy Priest, they're losing some very core spells like Circle of Healing, some core cooldowns like Holy Word Salvation. Sorry, I got mixed up with all the S's. Holy Word Salvation gone, which is great for the overall health of the spec and the enjoyment as a player because Holy Word Salvation, whether you want to admit it or not, was holding you back. It really was. And it was holding the spec back, thus holding your enjoyment of the spec back. Unless you're just someone who just hardcore loves Holy Word Salvation, then I deeply apologize. But this spec was so hard to tune around a spell like Holy Word Salvation. It was either strong and everyone hated it, and it brought down the spec because of how good it was, or it was bad and you just ignored it. And things like that just make the spec hard to tune and make your enjoyment as a player kind of soft capped because you can't go too hard. You're going to either be bad all tier or you can be balanced to a good spot and find your enjoyment there. But overall, these changes have felt or made the playstyle feel so much more engaging, versatile, dynamic. I think it is a huge win. Is it as great as Disc Priest? I don't know. It's the thing with Holy Priest is it's always a tuning disaster. So it's really hard to tell. So far in the PTR, the Disc Priest is just tuned a lot better. So you can really tell how good the improvements are. Whereas Holy Priest is, like I said, it's buggy and kind of tuned to the disaster level. So it's really hard to have as much fun, but you can really see that with proper tuning, like I'm not even talking about making it good. I'm just talking about making it like good enough. These changes would easily dunk on every other class. It's just right now it's so hard to find that enjoyment on PTR with Holy Priest. Moving on to Holy Paladin. Now, a lot of people are dooming this, and a lot of people are saying it's not that bad. I'll be honest, I land kind of in the middle of both of those categories because I think in season 1 of The War Within, Holy Paladin was like chef's kiss in terms of balancing. They weren't broken. You don't see them in the MDI. They weren't the best. They also weren't the worst. You could just log on, have a great time on your paladin, and play different playstyles. Really awesome playstyles, mind you, like thematics wise. Or you could just play an off, kind of playstyle, the Holy Shock playstyle, and like have a good time that way too. It was just a very well tuned and very enjoyable spec. However, they are taking a lot of the things that people loved about Holy Paladin in Season 1 and nerfing them. And it has just made it feel like a less impactful version. So it's kind of like they're shoehorning you into this playstyle that, mind you, a lot of people enjoy. And if you're one of those people, then I'm happy for you. But a lot of people are really upset about those changes, myself included. All the Lightsmith, uh, Avenging Crusader nerfs are just questionable. Like, why is Hammer and Anvil getting nerfed? It's already a random proc. It's just a lot of things like that. So already it's just less fun. Now to take into or to take that and build off of it, there is some good coming. Like they are enhancing all of they're taking a lot of power out of spells that you need to set up. So like Infusion of Light procs, you no longer rely so heavily on those to get Holy Word healing value. You can just cast a healing word and it does fine healing now, which is great. It's great. It doesn't punish you for just casting one of your healing spells as a healer. It does reward you if you wait until you get that flash Infusion of Light proc. But I, I I don't know. As someone who plays Mistweaver, we are the weaving spec. For us, it makes sense that we have two completely separate styles that fuse together to make what is Mistweaver, because we can weave between the mists. It makes sense for us. But for Paladin, it you're supposed to be this herald of the sun, like walk in there with these sacred weapons, bestow everyone with your light powers and stuff, which is what Avenging Crusader Lightsmith Paladin was doing. That is what they were doing. So it's just question marks. I don't think it's help, because like I said, they do have some great changes coming, some like positive buffs. They've buffed Light of Dawn like I can't even count how many times now. So like I said, I don't think it's drowning down here in this category, but because I do agree that Holy Shock and Herald of the Sun probably needed more love. I mean, those two spells both alone got so many nerfs over the past like year or so, because they've been brought back down in the line. They've been smacked on the wrist, so it's nice to see them get some love. However, like I said, Hammer and Anvil, your Greater Judgment, Heal Absorb, and like Truth Prevails, like all these procs that are kind of essential to that playstyle, that is just one of your two playstyles, getting nerfed is just, it's made it feel less enjoyable when you play that playstyle. And also the other playstyle, yes, it's getting buffed, but it's not becoming more fun, if that makes sense. It, to me, just my opinion, I do think it's less fun. I don't think it's abysmal, but it's not as fun as it was in Season 1, and it's not gaining enough to get it out of this category. So I'm going to leave it down here with Shaman, where it is just, in my opinion, actively less fun than it was in Season 1. Moving on to Mistweaver. Oh boy, my spec. Man, Mistweaver is not only getting a lot of hype around how solid they have been on the PTR, which those are kind of like fake numbers sometimes, so you never know what that's going to look like. But Mistweaver is receiving a lot of quality of life changes that inherently buff the healing that you can do in different scenarios. So the big ones are that your Chi now can gain its full effect of its mastery proc kicking up off of just hitting one target instead of up to 3 targets. This is great because one of the pain points of Mistweaver was you struggled a lot in bosses. You would have to take a lot of globals before the damage happens to spread around these giant hots and healing amplification effects in order to be able to heal these heal checks on a boss, because your major cooldown in Mythic Plus just was not carrying its weight. A lot of times, like there was one boss in this season where I would just pop Chi just for the Chi Cocoons and then just start blasting other spells like Shaylin's Gift, like all these other things, trying to heal through this mechanic. And it was just a shame because Chi-Ji is so much fun and it's so integral and it's so powerful and effective and does its job when you have multiple targets to cleave onto. But in single target, it was just not carrying its weight. It really was not. But now in season 2, it is. Your boss fights feel so much smoother. It feels like you actually have a cooldown in Chi-Ji. You do have the option of going Jade Bond, but currently I feel like there's only one dungeon where Jade Bond could be a discussion because now they've changed Jade Bond to where it is now a flat baseline 2-minute cooldown, but it does double those chi cocoons that you put out when you pop your Chi-Ji or your Yulon, which those doubly sized chi cocoons are super nice. But like I said, having 2-minute cooldown Chi-Ji is it doesn't really fit this season. This Some seasons there are seasons where like, oh, if I had a 2-minute cooldown, that'd be beautiful in this dungeon, but 1-minute cooldown is just hard to get rid of that. So I would like to see Jade Bond get a little bit more love, like maybe a 1-minute 45 cooldown, maybe, but I don't know. But so far, all of these changes have landed on its feet. On top of that, I talked about Chi-Ji, that effectiveness getting increased the less targets you have to hit. Blackout Kick had a lot of its power baked into that initial target too. Blackout Kick could cleave onto 3 targets. Now it still does. It's just you're cleaving for less value and hitting that initial target for more value. That's leading to so much more damage on single targets and 2 targets, and also it's leading to a lot more healing from ancient teachings. Super good. It has smoothed over these pain points. And then also on top of that, your crackling Jade Lightning. The number one thing that I think is going to bump this out of the as fun category up to the more fun category, maybe even slap your grandma, is the Jade Empowerment change. So Jade Empowerment is that amazing talent that you've probably seen some clips of, some Twitch clips or some TikToks of, where Mistweavers can AoE crackling Jade Lightning and do a ton of damage, thus doing a lot of healing to the party. The problem was in season 1 is that it would only hit if you only had one target to hit, it would only do a little bit of that damage. It only got its full value when you had more and more targets to cleave onto to get that more damage, thus more healing. In season 1, you get most of its healing, a lot of its healing from hitting a single target. Now it is more effective on single targets like a boss fight, or once you've gotten the pack narrowed down to that one enemy, it nukes that initial target, making it more fun as a player because you now have to be more mindful. Don't hit this target that's about to die, swap to the higher health target. But also it makes your boss fights feel like you don't just have these dead buttons on your bars for the boss fight and then, oh, we've killed the boss, these buttons are back on my bars again. You now have a full complete kit that is versatile and dynamic given the scenarios that you, the healer, are in. So it has been so much more fun. On top of that, I was very wary about the spinning crankcake buff. I'm always skeptical when they buff this spell because I'm afraid of it being another spinning crankcake tier where it's kind of like the only button we head bang on our keyboard on a lot of dungeons once we hit like 4+ mobs or something. It is not to that effect, but I have found spinning crankcake in certain scenarios, like think like your Cinder Brews, those first initial pulls where you just pull like half the room. You can shut your brain off if you want spinning crankcake and not int the key, which feels good, but also it's like having that decision point of should I spin, should I stick to my single target, especially during your Chi-Ji, is it worth it to spin here, or should I stick to my single target? It just makes the play style, the rotation, a lot more dynamic and enjoyable, and gives you the player more decision nodes that aren't going to break your brain. Trust me, we're Mistweaver players, we're not the smartest people on the planet. We can choose when to press these buttons now, and it just makes the spec feel more complete and fluid. On top of that, they've added a talent that is sneaking underneath my radar, Emperor's Favor. Your AoE cooldown Shaylun's Gift can now be used as a spot heal, a massive spot heal instead, which I have been just totally shocked by. This talent is so awesome. Not only is it so much fun to press, you just let this thing stack up like 5 times, like over 25 seconds, and then all of a sudden you top up a 20% health bar in one go. It's literally a lay on hands on like a 30-second cooldown. That's what people are kind of dubbing it. It is so much fun to use, but it's still up in the air whether it's going to find its use case in rating and Mythic Plus, but I doubt we go the whole season without seeing this talent somewhere. It's that powerful. So I'm debating whether we put this in Slap Your Grandma, but I don't think we do. I think a lot of the stuff that Disc Priest is gaining outweighs what Monk is gaining. The Hold on, let me caveat that. Both are receiving changes that are removing pain points, which are Monk's target situation and Disc Priest complexity situation, I guess. But Disc Priest is gaining more spells back. You're gaining your uppies, whereas Mistweaver's had Crackling Jade Lightning, had Jade Empowerment, we've had Chi-Ji, we've had Blackout Kick's power. It's just being more, it's gaining more uses. So I'm gonna leave these two separate for now, but just know it's close. You could argue Mistweaver is up here and slap your grandma, because I probably would slap my grandma. Let's be real. If I got to play Mistweaver today, I would sacrifice a slap on the cheek to play Mistweaver for another day. Now, okay, let's move on to Preservation Evoker. Preservation is always in this constant need of tuning, in my opinion. It's just you can never fix it in Mythic Plus and not break it in Raid. But these changes that I'm seeing coming into Season 2 are incredible. Honestly, they are incredible. So what they're doing is they're kind of reducing or limiting the effect of having a one-horse race when it comes to hero talents in both forms of content, because you have Chrono Warden for Mythic Plus and then Flame Shaper for Raid. They've done a lot of buffs and a lot of tweaks for Flame Shaper for Mythic Plus that I don't think are going to break it in Raid, which are super awesome. The most fun thing that you can do on Preservation Evoker, arguably, is have these massive damage bursts. I know a lot of people get upset when I talk about healer damage. It's just a fact. I mean, just big numbers are exciting. So you do your deep breath, and then you land, and then you tip the scales, a big fire breath, do a bunch of big burst damage. Then you do an AoE Living Flame, boom, huge damage. Well, now if you go Flame Shaper, you can then engulf one of those fire breaths, and then you're reducing the time of your fire breath, so you can then fire breath the same pack twice instead of sitting on that cooldown for 10 seconds between packs. You can have that cooldown up more often. Same with Dream Breath. If you wanted to engulf your Dream Breath, you can do that as well. It's just felt like so much more fun. You're cycling things more often, which is what makes this spec so enjoyable, is that you have so many different little cooldowns, and adding in Golf back in that mix, giving it an oomph in Mythic Plus, has made this so much more enjoyable. I was already a huge Flame Shaper fanboy in Season 1. It's such a shame that every time you press Engulf, it felt like it was worse than the last time you pressed it, because they just kept gutting it because of the Consume Flame and how broken it was in Raid. But now it honestly, it feels like you can play Flame Shaper Mythic Plus again, which I love. I love opening the door. Now you have a 2-horse race in terms of hero talent trees is exceptional. Huge plus. On top of that, they have removed some pain points. I know a lot of people, myself included, I remember there was one ramp that I was doing during my All Healers Challenge where I accidentally used my Emerald Blossom and just ate all my echoes, and I was like, dude, that's so stupid. Now they got rid of that. That will not happen again, so that is a huge bonus. On top of that, I think they have one of the best scaling tier sets of the whole season. So if you compare them to Resto Shamans, just the tier sets, Resto Shaman, they put their healing ring down, it has a chance to apply an insurance. Cool, right? Cool. Evokers, they can spread echoes on a lot of the raid on the entire Mythic Plus group, and then Verdant Embrace someone, and then get an echo or get an insurance on everyone. That is insane. So awesome. So much interplay. There's already just so many different variations of what you can do as an evoker that I don't know. I think this is such a good change. I think they have kind of nailed it in terms of what they had to work with in Season 1. There was a lot wrong, a lot of foundational, fundamental things that just were not allowing you to enjoy the full game as a Preservation Evoker. Now I think if you main this spec all tier, you will enjoy all forms of content. And on top of that, you don't hate an augmentation nerf. We can say it. Don't comment that down below, because I know someone's going to read the comments, see augmentation nerfs, and get upset that I mentioned it in this video, but it's just true. I think all the changes to Preservation Evoker, so far I haven't found one that I don't like. If I'm being honest, which I can't really say that for anything other than like Mistweaver, I guess. I like all these changes for Preservation Evoker. Now let's move on to Restoration Druid, the final healer. Where is it going to land on this tier list? Now, a lot of the hoopla or a lot of what's happening with Resto Druid is they're changing a lot about their damage. So what they're doing is think back in season one. You can either cat weave, where you're in and out of cat form to do a lot of damage, but also do a lot of healing in your druid stance, or you can play like a pacifist build where you just sit in your druid stance and sacrifice a ton of damage doing so in order to just always be ready to heal. Cat weaving is obviously more viable in a lot of scenarios because you can pump out more damage if need be, but it's a big devotion, and there's a big skill ceiling and a very low skill floor for Resto Druid, and not that none of that has really changed the skill floor to skill ceiling. You'll still just sit there in pug groups all day just having to reapply hots when no one's taking damage because there's always the risk that someone will take damage. So there is still a lot of frustration with just being a hot class with Resto Druid, but what they're doing with the damage changes, I think, is a positive. What they're doing is they're making it, instead of, hey, you can either take all these cat talents and do big cat damage or not. Instead of that, they're splitting it up. You can either take cat talents and devote some talent points toward doing bigger physical damage, so your cat damaging spells do more. Or if you don't want to do that, you can invest into some magical damage spells or talents. And now your Moonfire, Starfire, Sunfire, Star Surge, all of these spells are going to be more impactful. It's not going to break the bank. You're not going to do massive healer damage. So if you're mad at me for already talking about healer damage, I'm sorry. It's not going to break the bank in terms of healer damage, but you at least feel like you're not just like useless and just a heal bot. You can stop healing every now and then to cast a damaging spell, and it will do more damage, which feels great. It makes you feel more impactful as a healer. It makes you feel like you don't have to go into cat form to do more damage. And you can do some Boom Kink invokes, which are fun. They're really fun to watch all those Star Surges like machine gun in. So those changes, all in all, are good. But when you compare them to these other healers, what is changing? Honestly, bare baseline, nothing is changing to make it more fun as a whole spec. The only things that are changing are really honestly positives in terms of a play standpoint, but nothing to make it more fun and engaging like they did in season one. Back in when Resto Druids came into season one, they got some hot changes, made it so much more fun to play Resto Druid in season one. Coming into season two, I'll argue they just aren't receiving as much that's making them exciting. Now, I will say like their mastery change is very cool. They're getting a new spell, Symbiotic Relationship. Very cool spell. You basically link yourself with your tank, and then 8% of the healing you do to your tank goes to you. 10% of what you do to yourself goes to the tank. You would think that's crazy. Like it would add up to like, oh, 10% of your overall healing. It doesn't. It's just like 3-ish% of your overall healing at the end of a dungeon. However, that's still good. You're still adding some effective health to you and your tank. You can never go wrong with that. It's a fun spell how it works. But all in all, you just place it on them at the beginning of the key and then forget about it until they die or you die. And that's great. It's just not adding fun, which is what this tier list is all about. So please do not come at me if you main any of these specs. If you wish that these were higher or flipped around, I am sorry. This is all based on my opinion. You can take my opinions, stack them on top of yours, and build your own tier list if you want to. Please don't go and slap your grandma. But guys, this is where we're going to end out the video. Let me know what you think down below. Please be kind. Tier lists are like risky for me to make, so I try to be very careful when I make them, and I hope that you guys respect that, even though it risks me kind of upsetting some of you guys. So please don't get too mad. It's all for fun. I'm trying to give you guys some insight based on my PTR testing. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Are you excited to main Mistweaver? I know I am, and I think everyone else is. Guys, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.